Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Women in Math and STEM, where our mission is to reach out to as many professionals, aspiring professionals, students, whatever you name it. We try to reach out to them, who essentially support the initiative of bringing more women and young girls into the STEM field. So, with that being said, as always, feel free to open up the description or transcript to better follow along, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hello, and thank you so much for coming to the call today and talking with me. Just to sort of start off, do you mind introducing yourself as well as walking us through sort of your journey to get you where you are today?
Yes, hi. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. Um, my name is Janine Koeneke, and yeah, I can walk you through my journey. I can tell you a little bit about what I do now, and then we'll go backwards. But I work for an organization called Pod Network, and Pod is has two kind of branches of the company. One is STEM Connector, which is a professional services membership organization, and it's all about promoting jobs in STEM. So it's connecting students, educational institutions, industry, government, corporations, K through 12, to make sure that they're all working together in an ecosystem to create and support a well-educated workforce. And STEM jobs, science, technology, and engineering and math, represent some of the fastest growing opportunities. There's a lot of need for more diversity across those fields. And so a big part of my career is pushing forth on education equity issues and encouraging all people, but really women and people of color, to pursue STEM careers in the betterment of their own career opportunities. So that's what I do. And I will go back sort of to the beginning really quickly. I grew up in Southern California. I was super active in sports and music and student government, and I was a good student, a really good student, except I found math more challenging than my other subjects. And so I just started this, well, I'm just not a math person. I'm just not good at math sort of narrative in my head, which was reinforced by several teachers and a counselor. And I remember my counselor saying, don't sign up for the upper level math and science courses in high school because it's going to hurt your GPA. So just like take easier courses. And I listened, and I really regret that. I really, really regret that. And I went on and got my education. I went to a small private college my first year where I played basketball and volleyball on scholarship, but I wanted to experience a larger university that would prepare me for graduate school. So I transferred to UC Irvine, which is also in Southern California, and loved my time at UCI. And I graduated with a degree in psychology. And then I moved to Maryland, and I went to University of Maryland, where I earned a master's degree in education and development psychology. So I'm actually not a STEM professional, but I, during my time at UCI, I met so many fascinating women who are still in my lives. And we went on to become doctors and engineers and IT professionals. And I went to school in the 80s. So just being able to see women pursuing those type of careers and now thriving in those careers, I really wish I would have listened or had that encouragement myself. And so it's a big part of my education philosophy, is to be an advocate for these things. Don't let people tell you what you're good at and what you're not good at. You decide for yourself. Go out and be hungry for life. Try things. If what you're trying isn't working for you, try a different method. Try a different approach. Maybe try a different teacher. Maybe try a different school. Don't give up on yourself if there's something that you want to pursue. And that's just a big part of why I ended up in the STEM world as an advocate, not as a practicing STEM professional.
I see. I'm also curious, sort of, since you mentioned that you're an advocate as well as work in education equity or like career equity. I was just wondering, sort of, like what that looks like, as well as sort of initiatives or projects you've been a part of to sort of make a difference in like the STEM field or just like in the workforce in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I really got involved with that when I was living in Maryland. and completing my master's degree. And after I completed it, I started my career and I was working in Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C., I was working with special needs students and their families, and also families living in pretty extreme poverty. And it just became really, really clear to me really early on how disparate the educational resources, the facilities, the materials, the access to books, all of that. It was so different than the environment that I grew up in. And I remember thinking, gosh, I had all those resources and things, and I still didn't feel like capable. I had imposter syndrome before anybody knew what imposter syndrome meant or had heard of. And so it just opened my eyes. It's like, man, I had all those resources and these kids don't have that. Their families don't have extra resources to support them. Anything that they were going to get for their education was coming through school or through the library or in their homes. The internet wasn't in use at this point. So there was no going to the library and looking something up or Googling something on your phone. It was, if you needed to find information, you needed to find a person that had that information, a book that had that information, maybe a magazine or a newspaper, or you weren't going to get it. And that was so hard for those students in that environment. It was dangerous where they lived. There was gangs and drugs and food scarcity. So just going off to seek an education by themselves was so difficult. And I think that made me passionate about that. Was really where the equity came in for me. As I just looked and says, oh, so everybody didn't go to the same type of school I went to. I went to a public school. It wasn't a big fancy private school, but I lived in Orange County, California, and we had resources, that our schools had resources. And so it was that pathway in education early on that made me want to learn more about what are the type of fields that if you could get somebody prepared for, they really could rise out of poverty. They could really, thrive and change not only their own trajectory, but their whole family. And when I kind of looked at that research and I looked at so many of the highest paying careers were STEM based, right? And so I really saw that pathway was something that could help get people out of poverty. And also the products of engineers and the products of people who know AI and can code help all of us live a better life, right? So it felt like a real win-win. So some of the education equity initiatives and programs that I've been involved with, I worked for several K through 12 education programs, taught for a very short amount of time in schools, but I actually found I wasn't patient enough to be a teacher. I like being behind the scenes and helping to develop the curriculum, helping to find the funding for programs. That's how I became a grant writer and a fund development professional. Was I would create programs and then nobody could implement them. They didn't have the money to implement them. So I then had to go figure out how to help them raise the money. So I worked for several K through 12 education programs. One, ironically, was in a math program. I don't know if anyone out there knows who Gigi is from ST Math, but I worked at Mind Research Institute for 5 or 6 years. And it was really there working with everybody, the teachers, the educators, the designers, the mathematicians, that I learned there's no such thing as you're not a math person. And I learned that I'm actually really good at math. I just didn't learn it until I was in my 40s, which is a bummer. But that was really educational for me. So I worked at that organization. I worked and helped offer after school and summer programs and scholarships to deserving STEM students of color with the Tiger Woods Foundation. This is a great STEM education program that's a nationwide program. So I encourage your listeners to look up. They've got lots of programs in lots of different cities. So look up how you might be able to get involved there. And then, as I mentioned, since 2020, I've been with STEM Connector. And STEM Connector's role is to bring together everybody in the STEM ecosystem to try and provide career pathways, educational pathways for people of all ages. We say K to gray, K to 12, college, my age, which, there's some gray up there, and then older workers, because it's really never too late for somebody to learn a new skill, to be upskilled. Some skills become obsolete over time and you need to replace them with other skills. And we have constantly emerging industries. Everybody's talking about AI now, but did people know there were jobs in AI 5 years ago? There was. This is just that these industries grow and then the public becomes more aware of them. So we work and write grants to fund workforce development and STEM programming that helps people learn the skills they need for a STEM career, not only today, but in the future.
Since you mentioned that you started with STEM Connector in 2020, I was just curious, how has the pandemic sort of changed or shifted or broadened your approach when it came to advocating for equal access in education?
Well, yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I will tell you that we really learned a lot about how far we still have to go with equity in the pandemic, especially in education. The expectation was, okay, everyone's going to now go home. Kids, college students are going to be able to work from home, do their school from home. That assumes they have a computer. That assumes that they have Wi-Fi. That assumes they have a quiet room to sit in, and maybe, sometimes you have 5 people living in a 1-bedroom apartment, and now everybody has that one place that they're supposed to get all of their homework done, right? And you have parents who are very stressed, and they're probably working, and they were expected to be able to work. So what we actually found during the pandemic is a much higher percentage of women than men left their jobs because there wasn't a way to juggle all of those things. There was an idea that they needed to prioritize their children's education. And so they walked away, or they cut back their hours. They went from full-time to part-time. And what that means over the long haul is, if you remove yourself from your career pathway for a year or 2 or 3, you're a year or 2 or 3 behind where you might have been in your pay, in your seniority, in being considered for career advancement or promotions. So we see a very big ripple effect from what happened in the pandemic. And that's just for women, but also, a lot of students, if you look at the national math scoring testing, it decreased. So it had been on the rise for quite a long time. And then it took a very big dump back down post-pandemic, because those are fundamental skills that students have. And that showed up more in school districts that have fewer resources. The school districts that had the most resources could maybe get laptops and send them home with those kids, right? The schools that didn't have as many resources had to make the assumption that the students would be able to access a laptop themselves, or some kind of a device to do their homework or to attend classes. And that wasn't the case for a lot of families. So it had a big impact, and we're still recovering from it.
I see. Sort of on the same note, I was also just wondering, what are some challenges that you have to face or encounter when it comes to sort of providing more opportunities or resources for people who need it?
Yeah, money, being able to pay for those programs or those resources, access. I think one thing, that there's a lot of programs that are out there that people try and create and build to help another group of people. And really, what you sort of need to know and understand is, you need to include the people who you're trying to help in the building the solution. If you want them to if you want to truly know what they need, right? You need to ask, and they need to trust you enough to tell you. Um, you need to make sure that you're being culturally sensitive, gender sensitive, in providing. Don't bring your own assumptions and expectations into something, but really work with the community and figure out what is it that you need, and how can we be an ally? How can we be of help? Right. And I've seen really great programs on paper that got paid for, implemented, and didn't work because they skipped over those steps. So if you're going to build something, build it with the people who you hope are going to be able to benefit from.
Sounds good. Sort of just to end off, I was wondering if you had any pieces of advice, suggestions, recommendations, honestly, anything for students, but particularly minorities who are interested in pursuing higher education or some sort of career in the future.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in mentors. STEM Connector has a program called Million Women Mentors. I think that's how we met. And I would encourage all students, but especially female students, find a mentor. We have a program, Million Women Mentors. You can find it online. There's Girls Lead STEM is a resource. Girl Scouts, Million Girls Moonshot, which a organization that we work closely with, STEM Next Opportunity Fund runs. Tech Bridge Girls, there's a lot of really good programs out there, and they're available for students anywhere from, third grade through college. And so I would encourage you, find a group like that, because they're going to expose you, they're going to teach you, right? They're going to teach you about different career opportunities, about your own resiliency, about the importance of perseverance. And you know what? Hey, don't beat yourself up when you make mistakes. Don't beat up other people when they make mistakes, because mistakes are how we learn, right? Like that's, they help with negative talk, negative self-talk, which women can sometimes be guilty of, right? And so I know I was. And so I think surround yourself with other women who have the type of aspirations that you have, even if you don't know what those aspirations are quite yet, right? Like I was convinced I was going to be a lawyer, go to law school. I was not a lawyer. But I watched a couple movies and I thought, well, that seems dramatic. I want to do that. I want to stand in front of a courtroom and get somebody who's innocent off, right? That's what I want to do. But I didn't go that pathway at all. And a lot of people may change their mind several times during high school, college, and in their own careers. I have adult friends who have completely stopped what they were doing because they found it wasn't making them happy and shifted, right? But having a group of people that you can bounce those ideas off of, that can share knowledge and information for you. Mentors, it's always helpful to have somebody who's a little older and is a little bit further along their career pathway in a similar career as you, to help you along. But it doesn't have to be the same career. It can just be somebody who knows and cares about you. And there's research showing that people who are mentored are more likely to complete college, to complete their degree, and to complete it faster. And sometimes that's been attributed to just that sense of when you're really down and when you're really feeling like you can't do it, and you might want to drop a class or change your degree or whatever. There's at least sounding boards around you who care about you, and it can help you think through those decisions, right? So having and have many mentors, and they don't even have to be formal mentors. I have a couple of mentors in my life that are not formal mentors, but I learned so much from them. And one of them is a woman who founded STEM Connector, Edie Frazier. I still consider her a mentor, even though she's also become my friend. Peer mentors, we have a group, A Million Women Mentors has a program called WiSN, and it's 4 different universities that work together, and they're female marginalized students all work together, and they not only have adult teacher mentors, but they co-mentor. They do what they call peer mentoring, right? Or cohort mentoring. So that whole cohort kind of feels like they're a bit of a club, and they're there to stick it out with each other. The TGR Foundation also does that. The Earlwood Scholar Program works with cohorts, and one of my mentees was in that program, and it's fantastic. I mean, they don't have to all go to the same school, but with the power of technology, they can get on Zoom groups, they can call, they can text at any point. And if one of them is struggling, the other 24 people in that cohort are there to help that struggling student. So find yourself a community, surround yourself with positive people who are trying to accomplish similar goals in life, and then set those goals and chase them.
Okay, thank you so much for coming today and sharing your experience. It was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Go get them out there, girls.